Hi students, it's Mrs. T with Cultural Geography class. I am going to talk to you today about migration, which corresponds to chapter 3 in our textbook. However, we're going to continue to talk about chapters 11 and 12 and also bring in some of the topics from the religion, the cultural identity, the gender identity, the politics chapter. We're going to start talking about all of those right now too when we're talking about migration, because they all factor into some things that I've mentioned in previous lectures, push or pull factors that kind of get migration and the movement or flow of people from one place to the next in the cultural landscape. It gets it going. Okay, so look at me with what I just did in that previous sentence. I've used several key terms that go along with Mr. Help. So we are spot on with our cultural geography themes with place, location, and particularly movement. Is what we're going to be talking about today. One of the kinds of movement that exist in cultural geography realm, we're going to talk about movement of people from one place to the next. And so that is what migration is all about. It's about movement of people from one place to the next. Now, if you were in natural resource management, or if you were in forestry degree or something like that, and you were going to take those classes, you would also be talking about migration of birds and other animals and things that shift south for the winter or something. So migration is not a word that's solely associated with only human populations, of course, but in cultural geography, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the movement of human beings from one place to the next, sometimes within the same country, but sometimes across borders of a country also. So there's two key terms that are associated with the general concept of migration, or the movement of people from one place to the next. That's immigration with an E and immigration with an I and two M's. And so these words sound very similar when you're saying them, and actually I imagine that the captioning on YouTube probably didn't get my emigration and immigration spelled like they should be spelled. I imagine YouTube is spelling them exactly the same, and I'll have to go back and fix it later on. But immigration with an E sound at the beginning, this E should be a big hint about what this actually refers to. This is when you are exiting your country of origin. So this immigration with an E, you're exiting a place to go toward another place. And so you would be counted as an immigrant with an E in the population totals of the country that you're leaving, or the region, location, place that you are leaving. And there's a variety of factors as to why you might want to leave your place and how you might choose the place to which you are going. So when you enter another location, or when you go into another location or place or country, you are part of an immigration pattern, or you are an immigrant. Okay, so I means you're coming into a place, you're from someplace else, you're coming into a place. There's various kinds of immigrants. I believe your book has a section on what refugee status is. So certainly a refugee is a type of immigrant with an I, because they enter into another zone, they enter into another country, a safer place, a more stable place. You can be a refugee for many different reasons. There can be push factors. Maybe your country, your countryside, your rural area is caught up in a war. Maybe there's famine. Maybe there's all kinds of push factors that might cause you to immigrate, exit your country, to go into another country. Often refugees get a special status so that lots of different countries or regions who are willing to take a refugee are on the list to see who's going to get refugees from this type of area, or this type of refugee. Is it a political, economic, those different kinds of push factors that might get you to exit your country, to immigrate with an E, and become an immigrant with an I because you're entering into a new cultural landscape with potentially a new political system, definitely a new system of norms, usually language, another chapter that we're going to be talking about soon. It might be the next chapter that we talk about. I can't remember the sequence that I have in my outline, but there is a lot of politicization. That's a hard word to say. Probably YouTube didn't get that one spelled correctly either. There's a lot of politics behind migration, no matter what country's politics you're looking at. For instance, in Austria, which I believe I mentioned in a previous video about having really low birth rates in the 1990s, part of the reason why the government participated in population stimulus programs, such as the extra maternity and paternity leave that I mentioned in a previous video, had to do with the fact that immigrants to Austria were having large families and were essentially repopulating the territory, repopulating the region from the original cultural group that held it. So there's a lot of political reasons why some really good sounding government initiatives, like giving 12 months of maternity leave to a female who is willing to have a baby and giving, a stipend. I can't remember how much money economic stimulus was given for women to have babies in the 1990s, late 80s and 1990s. But these stimulus packages and benefits packages like extended maternity leave and paternity leave, that sounds wonderful, and it sounds like a very friendly government, right? And you might be of that opinion. I think it's great. However, if you look at some of the reasons why these things were presented and how unequally they were provided to the population who lived there, the non-citizens or the immigrants did not get those stimulus package deals because part of the reason why the stimulus package was offered to begin with was because immigrants were, watch my air quotes here, taking over the population of a country. And so part of what you can do when you're doing your research for Project 2 is consider, since stage 5 of the demographic transition model is conceptual, right, theoretical. My goodness, my dog is whining at me. If you heard some really weird noises in the background, it's not my stomach, it's my English Mastiff. But anyway, so if you hear weird whining, he's trying to get my attention. But you've got my attention right now. So anyway, what was I saying? So the migration of a country, the push and pull factors, could possibly contribute to a society's declining population. Stagnating population. And so stage 5 of demographic transition, though it's a theoretical stage, perhaps we could say that stage 5 is an actual stage, an observable stage at this point in the history of the world, if you include not just crude birth rate, not just crude death rate, but what about migration patterns too? If we added that additional feature to why populations stabilize or decline or increase, then perhaps we can make a little bit more, thorough prediction about why or if there are stage 5 countries in the world today. Junior, do you want to be on camera with me, Junior? I'll take a picture of Junior and post it in Blackboard for you, but he's grumbling over here because he wants my attention. So I'm sorry, I don't know if you can hear it or not, but it's a little distracting to me. So let me get some more information for you really quick and then pause this so I can tend to my spoiled dog. Okay, so here we go. Let's erase these things and let's talk about push and pull factors. Oh, wait. No, I have left out something. Junior made me forget then I need to talk to you about a couple of different types of migration. So you can add adjectives to the front of it. For instance, there is a type of migration called steppe migration. It's kind of punctuated where someone begins here, they go to another place, and that particular place is really not their final destination. It's not their intended destination, but it's a stopping point where they can kind of regroup, gather resources, do whatever is necessary so that the next stop on their journey is possible. So with steppe migration, you see it a lot, especially during diasporas, which are usually forced. Well, not always are diasporas forced, but you often use the word diaspora, which means a mass exit of people of a place, from a place. I'm sorry, Junior's whining, it's making me giggle. But usually you will hear the word diaspora referring to the slave trade in the United States. We'll call it the African diaspora. It was forced, of course, because people were gathered up like they were chattel and shipped off to be sold like livestock. And so the African diaspora or the Jewish diaspora or refugees from any war could be considered a diaspora. The Jews from Russia also had a diaspora that they experienced. And often when people are forced with no definite plan, they have to do steppe migration for a period of time, but others have a very thoughtfully detailed mapping of how they are going to take their steppe migration from their origin to their final destination. One of the books that I loved reading in graduate school is by an author named Richard Wright. He's an African-American author, and he wrote a wonderful novel. It's autobiographical novel called Black Boy. And you should get it on Audible or book on tape or whatever. It's a long book, but it's wonderful to read. And he and his family started out in rural Mississippi, and when he was able to migrate to Jackson, Mississippi, the urban area, which is one of the things that you see in migration patterns when people are migrating from one place to the next within their own state or within their own country. Maybe a rural area gets pushed toward an urban area because there are additional resources. You've seen the infrastructure video, and therefore you know that urbanization brings better infrastructure resources, which can bring about better public health, which can bring about better resources in general for housing, jobs, etc. And that's a pull factor that urban areas often have compared to rural areas. So often, steppe migration begins with going from the rural area to an urban area. So in Richard Wright's novel, he talks about being in the rural area, going to Jackson, Mississippi, getting a job for a little while and working his way toward Memphis, Tennessee, getting a job for a little while, becoming politically active, being drawn toward Chicago, because that's where there was a lot of similar political movements that he wanted to be involved in. He was in Chicago for a while, went to Detroit. And so the entire American novel gives you a really good idea about the historic perspective from one African-American male's point of view, growing up in rural Mississippi and becoming, part of a political movement in his adulthood as he migrated a steppe pattern toward the north. So rural to urban is often a steppe pattern that exists. You can look that up, maybe write about a novel that you've read that you see now as part of a steppe migration. Grapes of Wrath has this kind of theme in it also, a sub-theme within it, that steppe migration, trying to go they went from one place out, to the Dust Bowl, and then the Dust Bowl drove them to another place as they looked for work. Okay, so another adjective that you can stick on the front of migration is chain migration. Junior, I'll be right with you, Junior. No. Sorry, I created a monster. Anyway, chain migration is, it's just a benign thing that we're going to talk about without any political charge behind it. And the reason I'm saying this to you is because if you do a Google search for chain migration, and please do a Google search for chain migration, Junior, no. Please do a search for chain migration on Google because you will see why I want to tell you that we just need to learn this from the objective point of view rather than from the politically charged point of view, because chain migration has a bad, apparently, from the Google searches, it has a really bad connotation in politics. All it means is, in chain migration, I could kind of draw the same exact kind of pattern here. Chain migration starts with one person. One person goes to a particular place with the intention, so all of the people that in this person's family are left in the place of origin, and this person starts in a place where he or she is going, and maybe has a pattern of moving to another place and gathering resources, gathering materials, whatever it is, another place, sending money back home. There's a vocabulary word from chapter 3. Remittances is a word that we use when people immigrate, and when they are immigrants in their new country, they earn money and send resources back to their place of origin, to the family members they left behind. So part of this chain migration might be that this person left a family behind with the intent of remitting funds to them to help them out with their lifestyle. So the push factor was economic, the pull factor, so that they went to a particular place to do their immigration, was economic in this example. And so this person ends up in one spot, maybe takes a job in another spot, moving up to get even more resources, and then when this person ends up over here, there he is, he can send back to the origin place and bring a wife, bring children, bring a mama, bring, babies, whatever. There's my little one, it's baby. Anyway, and so chain migration simply means that you are an immigrant with an I, and your intention during your immigration process is to also rescue, if you'll let me use that word, rescue or bring with you eventually, so that you can improve their way of life and have families, cohesive family units together instead of across borders. Chain migration means that you get your foothold and then you bring other family members, usually key close family members, not distant second cousins, but your nuclear family members to your new place of residence with you. So chain migration is something that is a legal concept within the United States of America. We have legal precedents and procedures so that chain migration can happen, and it should happen as far as the law specifies it in the United States. In other places, chain migration happens, and it might not be something that goes through the legal means. And in some cases, chain migration can also include immigrants who are here on a temporary basis. So immigration can be cyclical immigration, or cyclical migration, pardon me, I should be saying the word migration here. It can simply refer to going to commuting, for instance. So I live in one town and I commute to another town when I teach face-to-face classes in order to be with my students and to be with my colleagues. And so that commute that I go on from one place to the next within my cultural landscape can be considered cyclical migration, because I go for a period of time and return. I go for another period of time and return. So anyway, cyclical migration is also something that is available for student visas, for work visas. In Arkansas, years and years ago, you can search for this historic event if you would like to have an outside source for a reaction paper and talk about cyclical migration. There was something called the Bracero program. I hope y'all can see this green marker, but the Bracero program was immigrant or migrant workers that would come to Arkansas during harvest times and work, typically Central American folks who would come to Arkansas for a period of harvest and then return home and then come back again during harvest time the next year. It was a special visa that they had, a temporary workers visa. So people who were on visas from other countries to be here, like a student visa to get higher education, or a tourist visa to stay for sightseeing reasons or for visiting family or something, part of the chain migration umbrella is also another concept that's very politically charged. I don't like this term. It's called an anchor baby. People who have babies in the United States or on the United States territory, that baby is automatically a United States citizen. And so that's another kind of, that's part of the law. That's how the law is written, okay? That's how the law is written. And so sometimes chain migration happens that way, where a child is born to non-citizen parents, and therefore the child as a citizen can eventually sponsor the parents to become citizens also, so they can legally be here for a longer period of time than their visas may be originally allowed. So there's a lot of political charge to this. I want you, when you're studying it, to look at it objectively and with a critical eye, so that if you do find an outside source on any of these topics to write about for your reaction paper this week, please make sure that you analyze that outside source from an objective point of view, zoom out and try to see whether there is a bias, a leaning one way or the next, talking bad about a particular type of immigration or overly good about a particular type of immigration. Either one of those sides is maybe an unnecessary bias when we are looking at this just from an academic point of view and learning what the process is. So please keep that in mind. I think Junior finally settled down right when I'm finished talking about this particular topic, but I will make sure and get a selfie with Junior here in just a bit so that you can see him. He's 8 months old. I got him right after the shutdown happened in March, and so I've spoiled him quite a lot since I'm home with him so much, or was home with him so much in March and over the summer when I wasn't in the classroom. So thank you for your attention, and let me know if YouTube did not get my captioning correct, because I betcha there's a whole bunch of words that are so similar in pronunciation that the captioning just spelled everything the same. So please text me and let me know if you see mess ups in the captioning. It would be nice if you could tell me like what the counter number is, how far into the video it happens, so that I can fix that. And watch for another announcement from me soon that we have another video to watch together. Send me those questions if you have anything about Project 2 that's in Blackboard for you right now, and I will see you soon.